fact that I'd agreed to do this, and wondering why I was doing this to him and why I was doing this to myself, and thinking that no good would come of this, and thinking that I was weak for doing all this, even knowing that it was going to do this to me. And his flatmate came back in, asked if he could get his bedroom back so he could have a shower and get ready. And my boyfriend, I use the term loosely because, well, we'd broken up, got back together. This was the first time that we'd been together since we'd broken up. It's complicated. Anyway, he said to give us a minute, and I got up, went into the living room, still without my sunglasses on, still crying. And everybody noticed I was crying, and they went kind of quiet, and I just sat down and watched the TV because it was bright colours and it was distracting, and eventually I stopped crying because my mind was being distracted by the bright colours and the voices, and my mind was being taken off of my current problem. Anyway, eventually we all head out to the nightclub, and we get to the nightclub and I'm still having bouts of crying, and every time someone tells me to cheer up, I start crying. Every time someone tells me to smile, I start crying, because at this point I'm thinking, I'm miserable, why should I smile? And I'm just being reminded that I'm miserable, and that there is nothing happy about this situation, and that I've put myself in this situation. And wondering why this keeps happening to me, and blaming my behaviour, and just getting down on myself, basically. And I spend most of my time that evening crying, and then his flatmate takes me outside to talk to me and starts saying that I should try to cheer up, if not for myself, then for my boyfriend. And at that point I completely lost it. I shouted at him, and I shouted, "Don't you think I'm fucking trying?" And that's the worst I've ever lost my temper. I was ready to slap him around the face for suggesting that I be happy for somebody else's sake. Especially when I knew that I'd told this other person that they couldn't make me happy, and yet they were still prepared to let me try and let me put myself through that. And instead of slapping them, I walked away and went to the ladies' toilets locked myself in one of the cubicles until I calmed down enough to stop crying. Text my boyfriend and said I'm going home. This wasn't an invitation, this wasn't anything apart from me letting them know that I was going home so they wouldn't worry. So I leave the toilets and I get a text back saying that he was waiting at a particular point. I got my bag and my coat from the cloakroom. I met him and we walked home together, and I didn't speak to him on the way home. I didn't touch him, I didn't look at him. I was completely cold to him. I was still crying. And we got home and I lay down on my bed, fully clothed, and cried myself to sleep with him next to me. And then the next morning I woke up and I didn't feel like moving. I didn't feel like getting undressed. I just lay there. And when he eventually woke up, he started trying to talk to me again, asking me what was wrong. And then he started giving me orders. I think he started by kissing me, and I didn't respond. I didn't tell him to get off. I didn't tell him I didn't want to be kissed. I didn't kiss him back. I didn't do anything. And he carried on kissing me and asking me if I was going to stop him. And then he took it further by ordering me to take my clothes off, which I did. And ordering me to do other stuff, and he just went further and further, trying to push me, trying to break me out of my state. And still I didn't say no, and I eventually started crying. And then it got to the point where he undressed himself and he knelt next to my head, told me to open my mouth and stick my tongue out, and I did that, and then he ran his cock over my tongue, and at that point I hated myself, and I hated him, and I hated the people who had encouraged us to get back together, and I was still numb and still not stopping him. And it wasn't until he picked up his phone that I snapped out of it, because I thought he was going to take a picture of me, and I couldn't stand the idea of being seen like that. And I started really crying then. Not like this. The kind of crying where